All right, so we're diving into this mountain of information on blitzscaling, and it seems like you're really into how companies go from 0 to 100.
Yeah, it's not just any growth. It's like hyper growth.
Big fast.
Yeah, the kind that takes a company from, like a garage operation to a global giant
Yeah.
in the blink of an eye. And you can imagine that kind of rapid growth can lead to some
Crazy stuff.
pretty interesting consequences.
Yeah, so to help us unpack all this, we've got excerpts from this book called Blitzscaling.
Yeah.
Reid Hoffman.
Yes, that Reid Hoffman.
Yes, that Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn guy.
The LinkedIn co-founder.
And Chris,
Yeah.
yeah. And they've studied companies that have used this approach to become, household names.
Yeah, and what they argue is that in today's world, speed is everything. Blitzscaling is about getting market dominance before anyone else can even catch up.
So if traditional scaling is like carefully building a house brick by brick, blitzscaling is more like strapping a rocket to it and hoping for the best.
That's a pretty good analogy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is a high-risk, high-reward strategy, and it really prioritizes speed over efficiency, even if things get a little messy along the way.
Okay.
Think of it like a company hiring like 100 engineers
Oh, wow.
before they even have a product roadmap.
Yeah.
That's blitzscaling in action.
That's a bold move.
Yeah.
Okay, so to wrap my head around this, let's start with the concrete example.
Okay.
Hoffman and Yeh talk about Airbnb's battle with a European competitor called Wimdu.
Yeah.
What happened there?
So Airbnb was already gaining some traction,
Yeah.
but then Wimdu emerged as like a direct copycat and targeted the European market pretty aggressively. So Airbnb had to make a choice,
Yeah.
Play it safe and focus on efficiency or go all in on rapid expansion.
So this is a classic David versus Goliath scenario.
Not exactly.
Oh.
In this case, Airbnb chose to become a bigger Goliath.
Okay.
They opted for blitzscaling, expanding globally at a breakneck speed. And it was a risky move, but it allowed them to build that massive network of hosts and guests before Wimdu could even gain a foothold.
So it sounds like that network effect was key. The more hosts and guests they had, the more attractive the platform became.
Absolutely.
To even more users.
It's like a snowball rolling downhill. It gets bigger and faster with every rotation.
I like that analogy.
And that's just one technique.
Oh.
Hoffman and
Yeah.
they highlight 3 key levers that companies pull when they blitzscale.
Okay.
Business model innovation,
Okay.
strategy innovation,
Okay.
and management innovation.
Okay. Let's unpack those, starting with business model innovation.
All right.
What does that even mean?
It's all about designing a business model that is inherently built for rapid growth.
Okay.
Think of companies like Uber or DoorDash.
Yeah.
Each new driver or delivery person on the platform makes the service more convenient
Right.
and appealing to customers, attracting even more users, fueling that snowball effect that we were talking about.
Yeah. So it's like a self-reinforcing cycle that drives exponential growth.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. What about strategy innovation?
Strategy innovation is about knowing when to blitzscale and what market to attack. It's like choosing the right battlefield for your growth spurt.
Right.
Take Tencent, the company behind WeChat. They recognized the huge potential of mobile messaging in China and went all in on WeChat. And they captured that massive market share before competitors could even react.
Talk about timing is everything.
Right.
That leads us to the third lever, management innovation.
Yeah.
What makes this different in a blitzscaling context?
Well, blitzscaling kind of throws those traditional management practices out the window.
Right.
You have to constantly adapt your structure, your decision-making processes, and the company culture to handle that speed of growth.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to steer a speedboat through a hurricane.
Whoa.
That's what managing a blitzscaling company can feel like.
Sounds a little chaotic.
It can be.
How do these companies even keep up?
It's definitely not for the faint of heart.
Right.
Hoffman and Yeh
Yeah.
actually lay out 5 stages of blitzscaling the companies go through,
Okay.
each with its own set of challenges and opportunities.
Oh, okay.
They call them family, tribe, village, city, and nation.
Okay. That's a pretty intriguing way to describe the evolution of a company.
Yeah.
What's the family stage like?
The family stage is the very early stage.
Yeah.
It's a small, tightly knit team where everybody wears multiple hats. Decisions are made quickly,
Yeah.
and everybody's passionate about the company mission.
Yeah.
Like a startup family working out of their garage,
I can picture that.
driven by a shared dream.
Yeah. What happens when things move to the tribe stage?
As the company grows, things get a little more specialized. Distinct teams and departments start to form,
Yeah.
and you need more formal structures to manage that increasing complexity.
Okay.
It's like a village forming as the population grows.
Right. And then comes the village stage.
Exactly.
This is where processes and management structures become more formalized.
Right.
You're starting to look more like a traditional company, but still with that emphasis on speed and agility.
So less winging it and more systems in place.
Exactly.
Got it. And then we move on to city.
Yes, things are getting bigger.
Things are getting bigger. What changes at this point?
At the city stage, the focus shifts from building new things to optimizing what you already have.
Okay.
You're fine-tuning those processes, improving efficiency, making sure the infrastructure can handle the continued growth.
So less about explosive growth and more about controlled expansion.
Precisely. And finally, we reach the nation stage.
The final frontier. This must be when companies become real behemoths.
That's right. At this point, the company is a massive, complex organization. The focus shifts to creating entirely new product lines and business units to continue that growth trajectory.
Wow.
Think Google expanding into self-driving cars or Amazon launching AWS.
Yeah.
These are hallmarks of the nation stage. Wow, so these stages really capture the entire life cycle of a blitzscaling company.
It does.
It's interesting to see how the focus shifts over time.
It is. And it's important to remember that these stages are fluid. There's no hard and fast rule about when a company moves from one to the next. It's all about adapting to the current challenges and opportunities.
Speaking of adapting, the book talks about some key transitions that companies need to make as they blitzscale.
Yeah.
What's the first one that comes to mind?
One of the most important is the shift in hiring strategy.
Okay.
In that early family stage, you need generalists.
Yep.
People who can wear multiple hats and adapt to changing priorities.
Yeah.
But as the company matures and you enter the tribe or village stages, you need to start bringing in those specialists with deep expertise in specific areas.
Makes sense.
It's like building a well-rounded sports team.
Yeah.
You need players with different skill sets to succeed.
Yeah, you need different strengths at different points in the game.
Right.
What other transitions should companies be aware of?
Another crucial transition is the shift from one-on-one communication to broadcast methods. In the early days, the founder can easily have a conversation with everyone in the company.
Right.
But as you grow, you have to rely more on company-wide emails, all-hands meetings, and other channels to reach that larger audience.
Yeah.
It's a bit like a small town growing into a bustling city.
Yeah.
You need different ways to connect and share information.
And as these companies grow, they also have to navigate the shift from founder-led decision-making to data-driven decisions, right?
Exactly. In the early stages, the founder's intuition and vision are paramount.
Yeah.
But as the company scales, you need to build strong analytics capabilities and start making decisions based on data.
Right.
It's like transitioning from steering a ship by instinct to relying on sophisticated navigation systems.
So data helps to chart the course.
Yeah.
And avoid potential hazards.
Yes.
Okay, so blitzscaling sounds like quite a wild ride.
It can be.
Are there any, secret strategies? What about the counterintuitive rules the book mentions?
Ah, yes, the counterintuitive rules. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because they challenge a lot of the conventional wisdom about how to run a successful company.
All right. I'm all ears. What's the first rule that stands out?
Believe it or not, the first rule is to ignore some problems.
Hold on.
Ignore problems.
Sounds counterintuitive.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It might seem that way, but in a blitzscaling environment, you're constantly fighting fires. And you have to ruthlessly prioritize the most critical issues that threaten the company's survival and let some of those smaller fires burn for a while.
So it's about focusing your energy where it matters most.
Yeah.
Kind of like triage in a hospital.
Exactly. And that leads us to the second counterintuitive rule: hire people before you need them.
Wait, isn't that inefficient?
It might seem that way,
Okay.
but remember, speed is everything in blitzscaling. By the time you realize you need someone with a specific skill set, it might be too late. So it's like building the plane while you're flying it.
Yes. A very vivid analogy.
Wow.
And this ties into the third rule. Embrace chaos and uncertainty.
Okay, this is starting to sound scary.
It can be.
Yeah.
But the reality is blitzscaling is inherently unpredictable. You have to build systems that allow for course correction.
Right.
And be comfortable making decisions with incomplete information.
Yeah.
It's not about eliminating uncertainty. It's about learning to thrive in the midst of it.
So flexibility and adaptability are key. You have to be able to roll with the punches.
Absolutely. And the fourth rule kind of takes this idea to the next level, launch products that might be embarrassing in their early stages.
Yeah, that sounds risky. What's the logic behind that?
It's all about getting user feedback as quickly as possible.
Oh.
Don't wait for a product to be perfect before launching. Get it out there,
Yeah.
see how people react, and iterate based on their feedback.
So fail fast, learn faster.
Precisely. And finally, the fifth counterintuitive rule is perhaps the most controversial. Don't be afraid to let customers feel ignored in the short term.
Okay, now that sounds like a recipe for losing customers.
It might.
Yeah.
But hear me out.
Okay.
During hypergrowth, you have to prioritize.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means focusing on fixing the bigger, more critical issues first,
Right.
even if it means some customer service issues might slip through the cracks.
So it's about the long game, not necessarily short-term satisfaction.
Right. It's about making the tough choices to ensure the company's long-term success.
Yeah.
But, these counterintuitive rules raise an interesting question.
What's that?
With all this focus on speed and growth, what happens to the human element?
Yeah, I was just thinking that it seems like things could get pretty intense for the people inside these companies.
It definitely can't. The book touches on the importance of building a strong company culture,
Right.
but it doesn't delve too deeply into the impact on employees. Perhaps that's something we can explore further.
Definitely. So we've laid a good foundation here. But it sounds like there's a whole other layer to this blitzscaling phenomenon that we need to unpack.
Absolutely. The human side of blitzscaling is a story in itself. Welcome back. Glad we're digging deeper into this human side of blitzscaling.
Yeah.
After all, behind all the algorithms and the growth charts,
Right.
are real people making this happen.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of rapid growth, but as you pointed out last time, there's a whole other story unfolding within these companies.
Right.
It's like watching a rocket launch.
Yeah.
We see this impressive ascent, but what about the intense pressure and G-forces the astronauts are experiencing?
That's a powerful image. And just like those astronauts need specialized training and support to withstand those forces,
Yeah.
the people inside these blitzscaling companies face unique challenges.
So let's put ourselves in their shoes. Imagine you're working at a company that's doubling in size every few months.
Yeah.
What kind of impact would that have on your day-to-day life?
Well, for starters, you probably feel a constant sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Deadlines would be tight, expectations would be high, and there would always be that push to do more faster.
Right.
It could feel exhilarating at times, but also incredibly demanding.
And what about the impact on company culture?
Yeah.
We talked about those 5 stages of blitzscaling: family, tribe, village, city, and nation.
Right.
Does the culture shift as a company moves through those stages?
Absolutely. In that early family stage, there's often a strong sense of camaraderie
Yeah.
and shared purpose. Everyone is in it together, working long hours, making sacrifices to achieve a common goal.
It's like a tight-knit group of friends
Yeah.
working on a passion project.
Exactly. But as the company grows and transitions to the tribe or village stage, that close-knit feeling can start to dissipate.
Right.
New people come on board, teams become more specialized, and communication becomes more challenging.
It's like a small town that suddenly transforms into a bustling metropolis.
Yeah.
You might not know your neighbors anymore, and things can feel a lot less personal.
That's a great way to put it. And this shift can be especially challenging for employees who thrive in smaller, more collaborative environments.
So how do you maintain a sense of community and shared purpose when you're growing at such a rapid pace?
That's a question that many blitzscaling companies grapple with.
Yeah.
It requires a deliberate effort to foster a strong culture, even as the company expands.
What kind of things can companies do?
Well, clear communication is essential.
Yeah.
Leaders need to articulate the company's vision and values in a way that resonates with employees, even as the company evolves.
Right.
And they need to create opportunities for employees to connect and build relationships.
Right.
Even if it's just through virtual coffee chats or online forums.
So it's about being intentional about building those connections, even in a remote-first world.
Exactly.
What about decision-making? We talked about the shift from founder-led decisions to data-driven decisions. How does that impact the way employees work?
That shift can be both empowering and challenging for employees.
Okay.
On one hand, it can create more autonomy and ownership.
Yeah.
Employees are encouraged to use data to inform their decisions and to experiment with new ideas.
It's like being given the freedom to chart your own course rather than following a rigid set of instructions.
Exactly. But on the other hand, it can also lead to a feeling of depersonalization.
Hmm.
Decisions that were once made through personal interaction and intuition
Right.
are now based on algorithms and spreadsheets.
And that can feel a bit cold and impersonal, especially if you're used to a more collaborative approach.
It can, and it also raises questions about accountability.
Mm.
If a decision goes wrong, who's responsible?
Right.
Is it the algorithm,
Yeah.
the data scientist,
Mm.
or the manager who approved the project?
It gets pretty complex.
It does.
So it seems like this data-driven approach, while beneficial for scaling, can also create a sense of distance between employees and the decision-making process.
It can. And that's why it's so important for blitzscaling companies to find ways to balance data-driven decision-making with human judgment and empathy.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Right.
where data informs decisions,
Mm,
but doesn't completely override human intuition and experience.
exactly. Now let's talk about another aspect of blitzscaling that can have a big impact on employees.
Okay.
The counterintuitive rules we discussed earlier.
Ah, yes. Those rules, they definitely challenge conventional thinking.
They do.
But how do they play out in the real world?
Right.
Let's start with that first rule, ignoring some problems.
Okay.
How do employees handle that?
Imagine you're a customer service rep for a company that's blitzscaling.
Okay.
You're flooded with calls and emails from frustrated customers.
Right.
But you're told to prioritize certain issues over others.
Mm-hmm.
It can be incredibly stressful to know that you can't help everyone,
Yeah.
and it can lead to feelings of guilt and burnout.
It's like being a doctor in a war zone,
Yeah.
having to make impossible choices about who gets treated first.
That's a powerful analogy, and it highlights the emotional toll that this kind of environment can take on employees.
Yeah.
They're constantly having to make these tough choices,
Right.
and it can be difficult to reconcile those choices with their own personal values.
And what about the second rule, hiring people before you need them? How does that affect team dynamics?
Well, it can lead to a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity for existing employees.
Right.
You might be working on a project one day, and then the next day your role is completely different
Yeah.
because a new hire has come in with a specialized skill set.
It's like suddenly having a new teammate added to your relay race,
All right.
and you're not sure where you fit in anymore.
It can be disorienting, and it can also lead to competition and insecurity,
Yeah.
especially if you feel like your job is at risk.
And let's not forget about the third rule, embracing chaos and uncertainty.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds pretty stressful.
It can be, imagine working in an environment where your priorities are constantly changing.
Right.
Projects are being launched and scrapped overnight.
Yeah.
And you're never quite sure what's coming next.
Mm-hmm.
It can be exhilarating for some people,
Yeah.
but it can also lead to anxiety and burnout for others.
It's like riding a roller coaster that never seems to end.
Yeah.
You might enjoy the thrill at first, but eventually you're going to want to get off.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for blitzscaling companies to provide those support systems for their employees.
Right.
They need to offer training and development opportunities to help employees adapt to that constantly changing environment.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to create a culture where it's okay to ask for help
Yeah.
and to acknowledge when you're feeling overwhelmed.
So it's about creating a safety net, even as the company is moving at breakneck speed.
It is. And that leads us to the fourth and fifth rules.
Right.
Launching embarrassing products and letting customers feel ignored in the short term.
Yeah.
These can be particularly challenging for employees on the front lines,
Right.
like customer service reps and product managers.
It must be frustrating to deal with angry customers when you know the product is flawed,
It
or
is,
the service is lacking.
and it can be demoralizing
Mm.
to feel like you're not able to provide that level of support that customers deserve.
So how do you motivate employees in this kind of environment?
It's not easy,
Yeah.
but I think it comes down to two things:
Okay.
transparency and empowerment.
Okay.
Leaders need to be honest with employees about the challenges they're facing,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to explain why certain decisions are being made,
Right.
even if those decisions seem unpopular or controversial.
So it's about giving employees context
Yeah.
and making them feel like they're part of the solution even when things are tough.
Exactly. And it's also about empowering employees to take ownership and to make decisions,
Right.
even if those decisions sometimes lead to mistakes.
It's about creating a culture where people feel safe to experiment and learn,
Yeah.
even if it means occasionally failing.
Exactly. Now, with all this talk about the challenges of working at a blitzscaling company, it's important to acknowledge that there are also benefits.
Right. It's not all doom and gloom.
No.
What are some of the positive aspects?
Well, for one thing, blitzscaling companies often have a very dynamic and entrepreneurial culture.
Hmm.
There's a lot of opportunity for growth and advancement,
Yeah.
and you're constantly learning new things.
It's like being part of a startup,
Yeah,
even if the company has thousands of employees.
it is. And there's also the excitement of being part of something that's growing rapidly and disrupting an industry.
Right.
It can be incredibly rewarding to see your work have a direct impact on the company's success.
So it's about finding meaning and purpose in the midst of the chaos.
Exactly. And for some people, that's enough to outweigh the challenges.
It sounds like there's a certain type of person who thrives in a blitzscaling environment.
Hmm.
What would you say are the key traits?
Well, they're definitely adaptable and resilient. They can handle ambiguity and change, and they're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and get things done. They're also highly motivated and driven by a sense of purpose.
So they're kind of like pioneers,
Yeah.
forging a new path and embracing the unknown.
That's a great way to put it. They're not afraid to take risks,
Right.
and they're always looking for new challenges.
It's fascinating to see how this blitzscaling phenomenon is not just transforming industries,
Right.
but also shaping the way we work
Yeah,
and think about our careers.
it is. And I think it's something that everyone needs to be aware of, whether you're an entrepreneur, an employee, or an investor. Blitzscaling is changing the rules of the game,
Right.
and it's important to understand how to navigate this new landscape.
So we've explored the inner workings of blitzscaling companies and the potential impact on those working within them.
Yeah.
But how does this all affect us from the outside?
Yeah.
Is there a way for individuals to protect themselves from being swept up in the storm of someone else's blitzscaling ambitions?
That's a great question, and it's something we should definitely explore further. After all, blitzscaling doesn't just impact the companies themselves.
Right.
It ripples out to the wider world, affecting consumers, competitors, and even entire industries.
I'm starting to think that understanding blitzscaling isn't just about keeping up with the latest business trends.
Yeah.
It's about navigating a whole new way of life in a world where things are moving faster than ever before.
It is.
We've been talking about all the inner workings of blitzscaling, like how it works and how it affects, the people inside these companies. But let's kind of zoom out a bit.
Yeah, you're right. We need to consider the ripple effects. Blitzscaling doesn't just, transform companies.
Right.
It reshapes entire industries and even our daily lives as consumers.
Right.
It's like a force of nature creating, opportunities and disruptions.
So for those of us not running billion-dollar startups, why does understanding blitzscaling matter?
Yeah.
How can we kind of navigate a world that's increasingly shaped by these companies?
Well, first, I think we need to acknowledge the obvious blitzscaling is often responsible for the products and services we use every day.
Yeah.
Think about how Amazon revolutionized online shopping or how streaming services like Netflix have changed how we consume entertainment.
It's hard to imagine life without these services now.
Right.
They become so ingrained in our routine.
Exactly. But, this convenience often comes at a price.
Right.
Remember those counterintuitive rules we discussed?
Yeah.
Letting some problems slide, launching imperfect products.
Right.
These can directly impact us as consumers.
It's like being on the receiving end of that move fast and break things mentality.
Exactly. We might experience glitches,
Yeah.
frustrating customer service, even privacy concerns,
Yeah.
as these companies prioritize speed over everything else. But it's not just about those individual inconveniences.
Right.
It's about the broader implications for society.
What kind of implications are we talking about?
Well, think about the impact on jobs. Blitzscaling often leads to, automation and job displacement
Right.
as companies streamline those processes and leverage technology to scale rapidly.
Yeah.
While this can create new opportunities in some areas,
Right.
it can also leave many workers behind.
It's like that saying, technology creates more jobs than it destroys, but those new jobs might not be accessible to everyone who lost their old one.
Exactly. And it's not just about jobs.
Right.
Blitzscaling can also exacerbate, economic inequality. As these companies grow, they amass tremendous wealth and power, often at the expense of smaller businesses and local communities.
It's like a tidal wave washing over a coastal town.
Yeah.
Some people might be able to ride the wave and benefit from the surge, but others might get swept away.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights the need for awareness and proactive action.
So what can we do about it? How can we as individuals navigate this blitzscaling world?
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to become more informed consumers. Right. It's about understanding the trade-offs involved when we choose to use products and services from these blitzscaling companies.
Hmm.
Are we willing to sacrifice, some privacy or quality for the convenience and low prices?
So it's about being conscious of those choices
Yeah,
and making informed decisions.
exactly. And it's also about supporting policies and regulations that promote responsible innovation
Ah.
and protect workers and consumers.
So voting with our wallets and our voices.
Precisely. But beyond consumer choices, there are
Yeah.
other steps we can take if you're in the job market. Think critically about the type of company you want to work for.
Mm.
Do their values align with yours? Are they transparent about their growth strategies
Yeah.
and their impact on society?
So doing your due diligence
Hmm.
and asking tough questions during the interview process.
Absolutely. And if you're already working in a blitzscaling environment, remember that you have agency.
Right.
You can advocate for ethical practices, speak up when you see something wrong,
Hmm.
and prioritize your own well-being.
It's about remembering that even in a fast-paced, growth-obsessed environment, we still have a responsibility
Right.
to ourselves and to each other.
Well said. At the end of the day, blitzscaling is a powerful tool.
Yeah.
But like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill.
Right.
It's up to us to shape how this force is wielded
Yeah.
and to ensure that it's used to create a better future, not just bigger profits.
This deep dive has given me a whole new perspective on, these companies and these technologies that are shaping our world. It's not just about understanding the latest business trends. It's about navigating this rapidly changing landscape and making conscious choices about how we work, consume, and live.
I think that's a key takeaway. Blitzscaling is here to stay, and it's going to continue to disrupt industries and redefine the way we live and work. But by understanding its dynamics, its challenges, its implications,
Yeah.
we can all become more informed participants in this,
Mhm.
exciting and ever-evolving world.
So to wrap this all up, whether you're an entrepreneur, an employee, a consumer, or simply a curious observer, right?
Knowing about blitzscaling gives you a valuable lens for understanding, the forces that are shaping the world around us.
Yeah. It equips you to ask the right questions, make informed decisions,
Mhm.
and even challenge the status quo when necessary.
And with that, we conclude our deep dive.
Yes.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights
Right.
and perhaps even a few aha moments along the way.
Remember, the world of blitzscaling is complex and constantly evolving, but by staying informed and engaged, we can all navigate it more effectively
Right.
and maybe even shape it for the better.